reported bandits coming out for peace deals, and you want to know what my reaction is to that. Criminals who want to embrace peace, we won't shut the doors to them. If they want to surrender, they are welcome. But that does not mean that we are going to relax on our onslaught on them.
It sounds so stupid that because someone turned themselves in after committing a crime, they are now declared innocent and repentant. How does it make sense? The fact that someone committed a crime and turned themselves in does not make them innocent. We should get it clear. It doesn't make them innocent. These terrorists carry out these attacks deliberately. They are calculated moves. And so, when they are caught or when they turn themselves in to be arrested, they should be made to face the consequences of their actions because they deliberately carried out the actions. It is not a case of accident. Someone driving on the road and hit someone and decided to go to the police station to report themselves. It is a different case entirely. And reporting themselves doesn't mean they don't have to pay for damage. They have to take care of the person they hit. Yes, that you reported yourself to the police does not mean that you should not be responsible for the treatment of the victim. You should be responsible for that. So if these terrorists decide to drop their arms and turn themselves in for the government to apprehend them, then they should be made to face the consequences of their actions because their actions were not carried out by accident. They were calculated moves, deliberate moves, and they inflict pain in the lives of people. They kill people. So the fact that kidnappers kidnapped people and let them go or released them after a bargain and later turned themselves in does not make them saint, does not make them innocent. It doesn't mean that they are not guilty of the crime they committed. Sometimes when I think about the decisions that are being made by the Nigerian government, it becomes so difficult to understand the Nigerian system. So if you say that these bandits, terrorists, unknown gunmen are repentant, they have now repented of their crime, what happens to their victims? What about the emotional trauma? What about the damage? What about the people they killed? So the case would be swept under the carpet, and just like that, they would be recruited into the Nigerian army because they have repented. And you wonder why the Nigerian army never succeed against these terrorists? You wonder why they never succeed? You wonder why they get killed? You wonder why these terrorists are still attacking? You wonder why they are still killing people? You wonder why they are still kidnapping people when the system is enabling them? You think they would stop? No, they wouldn't stop. They would not stop because they know that by the time they decide to turn themselves in, the government is going to welcome them with an open arm and absorb them into the system, and they become part of the system. That is the reason they would not stop. We would keep having terrorists and they would keep operating. They would keep succeeding against the Nigerian army because a majority of the Nigerian army are terrorists and they still work for their masters in the bushes. Any attempt to attack them becomes futile because they have insiders who give those ones in the bushes information. They give them information beforehand so that they could prepare, thereby giving them an edge over the Nigerian army. That is what is happening. That is why you think the system is failing you. That is why, as a Nigerian, you think the government is not doing anything. That is why you think the army is weak. You think the army is not armed enough, right? This is the reason. They are working with their enemies, and their enemies are more informed. And you know the funny part? The so-called ogas in the army, the so-called top army officials, are also working with these terrorists who are assumed to have repented and were recruited into the army. If we continue like this as a nation, we still have a very long way to go. In fact, we have not even started the journey to a better Nigeria. Expect more crimes, expect more kidnapping, expect more killings because more people would take advantage of how the system works and they would start committing crimes with the expectation that when they are tired of hiding, they would submit themselves to the government. And at the end, they would be recruited into the police force or the army. What a sick law. What a sick decision by a sick government.